This is part 3 of my Outlander Season 7, Episode 11 review. As always, if you are looking to avoid spoilers for the show or the books, please do keep on scrolling. So we cut to the morning after scene where we can tell that both Claire and Lord John are very awkward and uncomfortable with what just transpired between them and unsure where they are supposed to go from here. And as a book reader, I once again preferred how they handled this scene in the show as opposed to the books. You can tell right away that Claire is covering herself up. She's avoiding eye contact. She's uncomfortable and she's unsure how she should navigate this conversation with Lord John, given everything she knows about him, given things that they said to each other in the act. I really like how we got that little splice where she says you're not allowed to mourn him. He wasn't yours to mourn, rather. So there's a lot of pain points for both of them that they probably aren't sure if they should bring back up again or just leave it where it lies. And I liked how they tackled the body language in this scene and the delivery of the dialogue, because a lot of the dialogue is actually pulled directly out of the books, but it comes across in a very different way in the show than it does in the books. I said this in my last video, but in the books, Claire tries almost, I think, and this is just my interpretation of the text, but it almost seems like she's trying to make light of the situation. Like, it's so awkward and uncomfortable and she can't believe it happened, but she jokes with him at certain points. And I think that's also, again, where the delivery and the body language here versus the delivery and how it was intended to be read in the books, like, there's a line there that maybe I read it wrong, but I think a lot of people who were book readers were not thrilled with how Claire in particular acted in this particular aftermath scene. But for me personally, David Barry as Lord John is the perfect casting, and I will never get over it. And he and Katrina, I think they couldn't have done this any better, because the shock value of this whole storyline in the books was something that made readers angry. And I'm sure there's going to be people who don't love that this happened in the show, but when you compare it to how it was handled in the books, I really think that they made it make more sense here by having both of them shown individually dealing with their pain and then understanding better why they would choose to come together in such a low point, and also seeing them both drinking on their own, seeing how devastated they are on their own. In the books, it's like a snapshot and then it's just happening, so you were kind of jarred by the whole thing, but I really like how they handled it in the show. I've said that a million times, but I hope you get it. And in truth, a lot of what they say in this interaction is really beautiful, and it's a moment that I think has a much more effective weight here than it does in the books, because it was overshadowed by Claire's kind of crass commentary at times, but they have a really nice interaction here where they gain a better understanding of each other. And Claire asks very respectfully about Lord John's past and his relationships and how long it's been since he's been with a woman, and not in a way that is meant to make him feel small, but in a way of kind of extending her hand out and saying, I'm here, we might as well get to know each other. And that is underscored by the fact that Claire asks him if he's ever talked to his lovers in bed before, and Lord John says no. And I think that's when Claire has a realization that he has been missing out on this whole other angle of what it means to be in love with someone that she knows fully, because her and Jamie have that together. But Lord John does not, and he has told her in the past that he's lonely. He expresses that he has a lover at Mount Josiah, that they don't have any sort of attachment to one another. So I think Claire really feels for him in this moment, and even though I don't think either of them expect anything out of this other than it happened and now it's over, I really like this scene in terms of the relationship building, and also it builds the stakes for later on and hopefully what we get in episode 12. Just as an aside, the scratches on his chest cracked me up, mainly because it's a great detail to emphasize that they were both angry and sad, and like he says at the beginning of the conversation, he was not behaving very gentlemanly and she was not behaving very ladylike, and that's such a small detail that I think is great continuity. But then Lord John tells Claire about the stag, and again, that ties back to the title card, and it's a really beautiful metaphor, I think, for the stag coming is a beautiful thing, and he doesn't own it, and he doesn't take care of it beyond just admiring it for what it is, and he is okay with it coming and going in its own time and not having this sense of ownership over the stag. He can, again, just appreciate it from afar for what it is. And that's, I think, a beautiful metaphor for both of them at this point in their lives with the current situation that's going on. They have each other, and they have something that is special, which is reiterated here when Claire asks him, what do we do now? And he says, think of the deer. Also, David Barry not getting a spin-off series for Lord John Grey is an absolute crime. Roger and Jerry are still on the mission to find Jemmy or Jerry, his father, and they come across a man who gives them a tip about the ferryman potentially being sighted in a nearby village. And they have to pay him for this information, and they also, while they're there, ask him for a gemstone. Now, this gemstone is ideally purchased with Jemmy in mind, so to send him back through the stones. But later in the episode, we hear Buck and Roger reminding themselves that they're going to need 2 more so that they also can pass through the stones later on. Then back at Lallybroch, we finally see a scene that I've been dying to see on screen, which is when Rob Cameron makes a reappearance inside the house while Bree is there alone. This man actually has a direct tie to another character that we will see later on in this episode in a very interesting way. I know there was another creator that made a video about it. I will hint about that when it's time, but Rob Cameron I've done a character profile on him. He's a very interesting character, and we see him bring up that he has read the letter that Jamie and Claire left for Roger and Bree in the past, and he knows about the gold, and that Jemmy is the only person that knows the location of the gold in America. He also confirms for show watchers who haven't read the books that Jemmy is in this time. He never went back through the stones, and Jemmy is also not giving up the information that he wants. So at this point, out of desperation, he is going back to get Bree to make Jemmy talk, essentially. Now, Bree in the books is a very tall, imposing character. She takes after her father in that way. She's a very towering, imposing person. And obviously, Sophie Skelton is a lot more slender. She was a ballerina. She's just a more petite person. But I was still hoping that we would get a glimpse at how she takes after her dad with her quick thinking and just resilience in that way. So I was happy that when Rob Cameron is trying to threaten her, she does fight back. And I do like the change that in the show, they don't include him trying to make advances on her like he does in the book, because that was just an icky part that I didn't like, and it didn't need to be there. So she hits him over the head with a bottle, and we're going to have to wait until the next episode to see what happens after this. But there's a lot to come with this storyline and more people that get involved. So I'm excited for that to kind of pick up, because again, I think they've dragged out what's going on with Brianna for a while in the first 3 episodes of the new season. So I'm excited for it to pick up a little bit more with her. Then we see Ian return back to see Claire. He was worried that she might choose to return to her own time without saying goodbye to him, and he is about to travel with Rachel to go see Denzel Hunter. A lot of people were asking me in the comments why Claire wouldn't just choose to go back to her own time after Jamie's death was announced, and this scene is actually the perfect way to summarize what happens in the books and why she chooses to stay in this time, and it's because her and Jamie chose to build a life there. And I really do love young Ian. I think he does so much with so little screen time, and he's kind of the glue between the scenes. He is a character with ties to the original series and the first 3 seasons where we were so close to the book plot, and he's a reminder of Scotland. He has these Mohawk traditional ties that we all love to watch, and I also think John Bell is just a great, cute, emotive actor, so he does a great job with young Ian. I think this is also a great way of reminding people that Ian knows that Claire is a time traveler and believes her, because at this point, he's one of the few people in her circle right now that understands what she's going through and the knowledge she carries around with her on a daily basis. So I liked that we had this little refresher for people who might not have that front of mind moving forward in the storyline. And I'm running out of time, so come back for part 4.